All right, thank you, and welcome everybody to the November meeting of the Data Analysis Technology Advisory Board. I appreciate everyone's time for this meeting. We had a couple of topics on the agenda for today that we want to cover in the next hour, going through a couple of quick planning and scheduling updates for the board, for the timeline for development of the state data plan, any review or comments on the draft of the plan that we submitted last week, and then 2 updates on the open data front on for geospatial, and then open data based on some of the comments from the board in the previous meetings. Hopefully we can cover all of that in the hour, and I appreciate everyone's time again for this. I think we need to begin with the roll call, which I was hoping to delay until we get everyone here. But let's go through the voting members, and then we have the ex officio members. We have a couple online. And Valentina, again, tell me if there's someone that I'm not seeing here. But just for everyone, if you can introduce yourself for the record in the order I see on my screen for the voting members. I know we have Thad, Seth, and Bree, just the way you're showing up on my screen.
Thank you, Scott. My name is Thad Dymkowski. I'm the GIS analyst for the town of South Windsor, and I'm representing municipalities on the advisory board.
Hi, thank you, Scott. I am Seth Klaskin. I am a vendor, an IT vendor for a local Connecticut IT provider. And prior to that, I served as the director of the Business Services Division for the Secretary of the State for about 9 years. So I have both state management and private sector IT experience. Thank you.
If it was my turn next, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying close enough attention, but I'll go. I'm the appointed representative at the legislature from the House Republican office, Bree Berner. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
I'll go next. I'm Alfredo Herrera. I am the Geographic Information Officer, housed within OPM.
I think we have John and Charlotte from the ex officio membership as well.
Yep. I'm John Newman from the Attorney General's office in the Privacy and Data Security section, ex officio.
Hi, everyone. Charlotte Muller, and I'm with the State Comptroller's office.
And I see Michelle too.
Sorry, was in another meeting, so sorry I'm late, but I'm Michelle Reardon-Nold, and I'm the director of the Connecticut Data Collaborative.
Oh, and then Paula, here we are.
Yes, hi, good morning. Paula Perlman with the Freedom of Information Commission.
All right, and just for record as well, I'm Scott Gall, the Chief Data Officer and the Chair of the board. So with the introductions, I think we'll kick off the meeting. I have the agendas up here again. We're hoping to cover the preliminary draft of the plan, get any initial feedback or direction from the members of the board, and then go through 2 updates on the open data front based on feedback the board had in prior meetings. I wanted to cover 2 sort of administrative things just at the outset, and I'll go through one of these in the slides momentarily with the slide. So one, I do not believe, so for the appointed members of the board role, you're appointed through a variety of different appointing authorities from the legislature. The appointments, I think, are coterminous with the appointing authorities. I don't believe any of the appointing authorities turned over in the elections this week, but if that were the case, please let us know, and then I think your appointments would roll over with that. But my understanding is there's no changes in the appointing authorities for this, but if there's something where that has changed, we will work with you on whatever is necessary to manage that transition. I know last time there were changes in some of the appointing authorities through the election cycle, and so I don't think that's been the case this time, but if that if you know if that's changed for your appointing authority, please let us know. So just want to be on top of that. And then the second thing we need to do is schedule, I will pull up these slides at the timeline. We need to schedule a public hearing on the state data plan, and I will give everyone a refresher on the timeline in a second. And I just want to, I don't want to use meeting time to schedule it, but to give everyone a sense of the parameters for it, and then we can schedule it offline. So can you see the presentation? Do you
Yes.
see slides? And it's not in the my mode, it's the presentation mode. Great.
No, it is. It's not in presentation mode. It's still, you can still see the
Oh.
slides on the side.
Let me do it again. Better?
Yep.
Thumbs up.
Yes.
Love it. Wonderful. Successful government. I'm going to skip over this for a second. So the this is a refresher kind of on the timeline for the state data plan. So we plan is every 2 years. Generally, the framework that we've had for it is go through some initial discussion, kind of scoping for the plan in September and October. There is a statutory deadline where I submit a preliminary draft of the plan to the data board by November 1st. I missed that deadline by a few days, but we're at least close to that. And then the other requirement in statute is that the board holds a public hearing on the draft plan within 30 days and uses that public hearing in their own expertise to recommend revisions to the plan. So we need to set up a public hearing on the draft of the plan within 30 days. I don't know if that strictly means from the time that I submitted the plan or from November 1st, but we can work with you offline to schedule this. But I think if we were looking at dates between the 28th to the 30th of November, that would keep us in that timeline and would give a little advanced lead time to make sure that we have a robust public hearing for this. So I just want to, are there questions on the timing for that or anything that folks want to flag before we kind of work offline to schedule this with you? Nothing. Okay. The last time we had a public hearing, it was a challenging process to do the public hearing in a virtual format. I anticipate that we probably will do the public hearing in a virtual format to allow broader participation, but it was a little rocky last time. We had a lot of people register who did not sort of show up to provide comment. So I'm open to suggestions on it, but hopefully if we schedule it far enough advance and use that 28th to 30th of November window, that gives us time for to get robust public participation, get people lined up for that meeting. And I encourage the members that we will do sort of outreach from here from the OPM side, but I encourage members of the board, if you've got suggestions again on outreach or places to circulate the draft now that we have it, then that public hearing should be a good time to get a broad set of input to finalize and develop the plan by the end of the calendar year. All right. Any feedback on the timeline other than that? And we'll work with you offline to schedule, find the actual time for the public hearing, but I just want to put on people's radar that that window for November 28th to 30th seems the most likely time when we could get enough advance notice and still meet the requirements that we have in statute here. That does not limit public comment or participation to that 30-day window, but we just need to have that hearing within the 30 days. From the submission of the draft. All right. All right, so hearing nothing, I'm going to go through a brief overview of the current draft of the state data plan, and then kind of consistent with the purpose of the board, would really welcome feedback, suggestions, redirection from the members of the board. Again, I know I sent this a little after the deadline. Hopefully there's enough time to give it a quick read. I'll give a brief summary of it here, and would welcome comments now, but it's not limited to just this meeting. Again, we've got 2 months really to finalize the plan before the end of the year deadline. So I'll give a quick overview of this with the 2 slides here for everybody, just so you have a sense of what's in the draft plan. And let me say two things kind of at the outset about this. So this is the third installment of the state data plan. Again, it runs on a 2-year cycle. So there was a first plan drafted by my predecessor, a second plan that I worked on 2 years ago, and then this will be the third in the series of the state data plans. So in that, as this sort of reaches more developmental maturity for creating these plans, I've tried to make this plan consistent with the prior plans and have not changed a lot, so that we have some stability in the plans, that they're not going in completely different directions each year. So I think what you'll see in this draft has a lot of consistency with the last state data plan, for better or worse. And I welcome sort of, again, guidance on how people want to see that fulfilled in the plan that we put forward at the end of this year. But I've tried to keep it consistent so that there is like a long-term direction that we are making modest revisions to kind of every 2 years. The other thing we've done in this draft is also basically try and trim the plan down a little bit. So we had some sections and content in the plan in the past that I've taken out in this draft, with the goal of making it a little easier to read and interact with. So the past plan had focal points. It had some more detailed reporting on agency level projects, which I think were interesting, but did not seem to me like they were widely used in the past couple of years. So I've tried to make the plan a little more streamlined and direct, and really focus on 3 priority areas, set goals, and ideally measurable outcomes for those 3 areas over the next couple of years. And all of this, I think, as hopefully everyone is aware, is done within the available resources. So we are planning for things that hopefully we can actually fulfill within the next 2 years with the resources that are available for that. But that I wanted to go through as kind of scene setting for the plan as a whole, that I've strived to have general consistency with the past plans, so that going forward in the long run, the plans are consistent over time, and to streamline a little bit of the material in the plan. So again, it's a shorter, relatively easy to read and engage with document, which hopefully facilitates some of the public participation and engagement with it, that it's not a unwieldy or very dense thing. So, but again, we'll take sort of the advice and guidance on how to proceed with that. And I'll go through what we've got in the current plan. Here, there's 2 slides. So the way the plan's structured is it has these priority areas, 3 priorities, goals in each area, metrics to measure progress on those goals. And then the next slide are specific implementation steps to sort of achieve those goals. So both, what are we trying to do? What are the goals that we have for the plan? And then how will we actually implement these over the 2 years, again, with the resources that we have available. So hopefully it's a realistic plan. I don't think there's anything that's overly aspirational or imaginary in here. So the draft plan has 3 priorities here, and the language in the slide is actually rewritten a little bit from what's in the plan itself to try and make it a little easier to grapple with. So first priority is improving access to data. So the data the state collects or possesses, making sure that when possible, that's accessible to a wide range of stakeholders. The second priority is supporting agency capacity. The work that the state does with data requires capacity, requires human beings to work on it, requires capacity for the agencies. And so we want to make sure that we are doing the most with the resources that we have to enable us to fulfill the goals of the plan. And then the last goal is to improve the use of data to inform decision-making, to make sure that the data the state collects, possesses, is really being used whenever possible to inform both policy and practice, wherever possible, through the state, but also through, I think, a wider range of stakeholders outside. So the first priority and the third priority are the same as they were in the prior state data plan, again, for consistency. And some of the metrics are the same. We modify them a little bit where something is kind of easier to measure or to just tweak something based on lessons learned over the past couple of years. And in the draft plan, you have some of the the actual results on these metrics for the past 2 years. I didn't want to take too much time to go through this in this meeting, but where possible, we tracked progress on the metrics that were in the last plan in the draft plan document. So these are what's again in the draft plan as the 3 goals: improve access to data, support agency capacity, and improve use of data to inform decision-making. Proposed ways to measure progress on those goals over the next couple of years. And then on the next slide are implementation steps, things we can actually do that at least I believe we can actually make progress on in the next 2 years that help fulfill these goals. So for improving access to data, building on existing efforts to improve navigation and access to state data through a variety of different portals, and we can talk through the details of that in a second. Working to improve access to census data in close partnership with the State Data Center. Working to identify ways that we can make process improvements, particularly on the GIS data front, where we're collecting a lot of data from municipalities, and we want to make sure that that's a streamlined process. We can get that out to the public, and that we're documenting those things well. So these are all things that I believe we can make progress on that help us achieve the goals in the next 2 years. In the second bucket, we have a typo already. We have supporting agency capacity. And so we're looking to find ways to sort of make the most with the resources that we have for the state's use, management, analysis of data. And so one change in the last couple of years has been the optimization of the state's IT resources, creation of a centralized IT agency. So identifying opportunities to continue and build on existing coordination with the Bureau of Information Technology Services, putting shared resources for guidance, tools, processes for state agencies so that we're not reinventing the wheel across different agencies, and that we're improving our own internal documentation access to and use of that documentation, that we're looking at sort of creative models for having staff work on projects, particularly cross-agency data projects, and then really looking at training capacity building on a couple of different fronts for state agency staff so that we can provide professional development and real opportunities for agency staff to learn and grow in their role as data professionals, data users. And then last but not least, sorry, I blocked part of my screen, is using data for decision making, trying to ensure that the data the state collects and possesses is put to good use to benefit residents, improve services, make government more efficient. And so we're trying to do that through a variety of ways, making sure that we've got priorities that we use to guide how the state conducts or facilitates analysis or research, making sure that we continue to build on the progress we've made through the state longitudinal data system to make that an efficient way to inform policy and practice in the areas that are covered through the agencies that participate there, improving the standardization of, particularly for the collection of race, ethnicity, and language, which is led really through the Office of Health Strategy, but building off the progress in that area to improve the collection of demographic data statewide so that we have accurate information that we can compare kind of across agencies, and then using, I think, some of the windfall that has come to the state through pandemic-related funds to really dig into what we are learning from the use of those funds, and to make sure that we don't miss this opportunity to learn about the impact of those funds and where we can, put those lessons to play more broadly in state government. I think those cover the main points that I wanted to go through, again, in the hopefully relatively brief overview of the state data plan. But the overall, again, the purpose of it, you have sort of in the slides here. What is the plan supposed to cover? The timeline, we have really 2 months to kind of finalize this before the end of the calendar year. This draft, public hearing, more broad public participation, ideally outside of the scope of that hearing, revisions through to the end of the calendar year, and then I will submit the plan to this board by December 31st, hopefully before it. That's the timeline, and the current draft of the plan, which is again really a draft, is structured around these 3 goals: improving access to data, supporting agency capacity, and the use of data to inform decision making. So I will stop talking for a while, and then if there's suggestions, revisions, guidance that any members of the board want to provide. Now is a great time to do so. You are not limited to doing it right now, but I wanted to make sure we use the time to get ideas on the table before we start making revisions and finalizing the plan.
Hey, Scott, is there any way that
Yeah,
we could perhaps have, even if it's informal, not wanting to break any sort of rules or anything, but just maybe set aside some time for the board to get together and do a little brainstorming on this in terms of putting together some ideas? I don't want to kind of let this opportunity slip by for us to get this right the first time.
Yeah, I will park this for a second for some discussion, but I think finding a way to do that, again, it's really the role for the board, I think, is identifying individuals with that expertise to provide kind of guidance on this. We want to make sure we use the opportunity for that.
Can I chime in just for a second?
Yep,
If members decide to do that, we would have to have a meeting to do that.
Yes, this is so. We 2 times ago we ran into that we encountered the same scenario, and I believe we did. And Michelle was on the board at the time. I think could correct me if this is wrong, or someone who has the parliamentary procedures, or Seth was on this as well. I think we convened a subcommittee to hold those meetings to allow sort of more streamlined participation, but still meet the public meeting requirements.
Well, Scott, just quick
Hello.
question.
Thank you.
So the plan, will this plan, and I read through the plan, I'm not sure if this is even pertinent to the plan, but I'm going to ask it. Would this plan have detailed, procedures for how to address and execute these goals, or is that out of scope?
Well, I will flip the question a little bit to the board members and get a sense of the level of detail that you'd like to see in the plan. I'll say, and I think I said this at the beginning, so it may have been prior to when you joined, we've tried to keep the plan fairly sort of streamlined in terms of content because it's a document that we want people to be able to engage with and read, and it's planning, across all the agencies and state government for the next 2 years, so that it does not go into necessarily the level of detail that you may be asking about, but this is an area where I think the board could provide some advice about the level of detail you'd like to see, or perhaps specific areas, like this is an area we think we'd like to see more detail in this area, the less is necessary. I will say it's a little bit of a balance to write things into the plan that are proposed activities that we may not have clarity on how we're going to be executing in, a year or 2 years, particularly with the requirements that we have for sort of doing this within available resources. But I don't know what the guidance from the board is on how much detail you'd like to see or not see in this.
I would just say to that, my experience on other boards, Board of Ed, for example, streamlined is what you want to shoot for. On the other hand, if there are any specific areas where the board would like to see an emphasis, we could request a bit more detail just to kind of better regulate the way we see going forward to be best practices or the best way to proceed. And so it can be a combination where it's mostly very easy to read, but if there's an area of emphasis that we might want to take a more proactive approach as a board with kind of putting some directory language in there. And I thank Scott for recognizing that in his statement a moment ago.
Yeah, I guess my concern would just be that ultimately what we end up is with a document that is used for the purposes that it's intended, and that it's not just doesn't just become one more digital file in the state volume that is pointed to at times only when someone's trying to make a point, but rather used as a guide, as I'd like to think it's intended to be.
Yeah, and on that point, one issue that I would like to raise for the consideration of my fellow board members is that, between the time the original plan was developed and now, we had a major pandemic that really changed our lives in many significant ways. I think from that, we learned a lot of things. We probably are ahead of many states in terms of the data we already collect and important key data like P20 win and some of the housing, homelessness, and at-risk sectors that was helpful, tremendously helpful during the pandemic in terms of targeting responses for those at-risk and adversely impacted communities. But at the same time, we probably also learned that it was a bit frustrating and we probably could have used more data. And, probably it pointed to a little bit of a weakness in what Tad was saying, in that we have this wonderful document, but I don't know, I don't feel comfortable that it has been implemented or used as quickly as it probably should and could be. And to that end, I would like to consider the impact of our shrinking public employees. We've got the silver tsunami, and maybe we aren't losing as many state employees as we anticipated, but we've still lost a significant amount and will be losing a significant amount going forward. So when you look at supporting agency capacity in the middle of the screen there, and you say agency participation in training or capacity building efforts, I think it's absolutely, spot on to increase training and capacity building within the agencies. But at the same time, we need to recognize the practical reality that agency resources are stretched further. There are fewer of them, and to try and teach them how to do it may be a collision course with not experiencing success. We may want to consider, for example, looking to outside sources to help speed each agency's management of the transition to identifying libraries and making them available. And we might also want to speed the effort to automate data transfer so that you can set it and forget it, and you don't need more than 1 or 2 people at each agency or in each major division of an agency that are like data mavens. In addition to their other daytime job in the agency. So if we do have some kind of a subcommittee structure, I would like to explore areas where we can lean on either quasi-governmental agencies or organizations in partnership to try and automate the process more so that we can get to the finish line and we're not constantly talking about how we're going to train more people, and then eventually those more people that are never going to exist are going to get the data online. Sorry, I hijacked the proceedings for a while, but I think that's an area rife with consideration.
Scott, I would echo that and support that. And I would then question, do we have a budget or is there a budget that can be leveraged, even if it's a temporary budget from federal grant funding, to look for a vendor that has done this before for other agencies and organizations?
Yeah, these are, and Seth, that is not hijacking. It is entirely the purpose of this board to provide, I think, some of this expertise and guidance. So maybe 2 things, Frank, for your initial question in this sort of exchange, I think it would help to, as Seth had said, to identify if there's specific areas you want to dig into in a little more detail. Then I think we could flesh that out. To kind of Frank's last question, there's no direct budget for this. It's within available resources. So it's the resources that, all the agencies sort of have collectively for this. Something that I think I'm hearing is flagging both the the opportunity and the challenges with agency capacity. I will highlight sort of the first item here. I can't tell whether you can see my mouse or not. The first item in the middle one here, and where I think there's a real opportunity with the development of BITS as a Bureau of Information Technology Services to try and provide both internal expertise and probably a faster path to working with external resources. They have the authority over IT procurement. And so that's sort of the avenue through which that would occur. Our member from DAS who represents BITS is not on the call today. I think he's out of the office this week, so he's not on the call today. But I would take this as like this area needs to be maybe fleshed out a little more, and that's where you want to see some follow-up. That's maybe what I'm taking from this exchange. And again, that also, to Seth, to your point, is a change in the last 2 years that reflects both the kind of silver tsunami perspective on state government and the pandemic, the need to sort of do things across agencies in a way that was not done previously. So that's a change since the last plan.
Just to Seth's other point, Scott, about, the pandemic revealing lots of gaps and holes in data that's accessible, but very necessary for the public. I don't know that I saw that come through. Maybe I missed it. I know, for example, we're working on population estimates because they're needed town level disaggregated population estimates to be able to calculate vaccination rates, right? Which we can't do right now. So, things like that, where there's real holes in terms of what we have in public data for making informed decisions.
I would think that would come under the first column there, improve access to data, is where I would likely put that concern.
Yeah, and I think that second bullet is hopefully directly to that point. But I think, Michelle, what you're bringing up too is that it's not explicit. Like there's a very concrete example that Michelle's describing where for vaccination particularly, but I think for lots of different ratios that we're using, we don't have the denominator as accurately measured as we would like. And so that's where the census is the source for that. The population data that's generally done through state level estimation using the federal data is there's an opportunity there. So I'm optimistic we'll be able to see progress on this front in the next 2 years through the state data center.
Yeah, and maybe just calling out some of those, DSS, I know really tried to work hard to make real-time data. I would hate to see that go away, but it was a huge lift for them. It was not easy. I don't know. I just think maybe more specific. I know you're trying to keep this high level, but do think some specifics.
Yeah, and let me no, I think that it's good to get the sense of the areas in which folks would like to see specifics too. And some of this I think we can be responsive to. Just to say a couple of things that actually in a minute we'll go through some of the results from the Open Data Portal survey that Pauline had done for state agencies. One of the key conclusions from that is improving the ability for agencies to automate feeds of data, which would alleviate some of the, and we've hopefully seen progress in that area, and that would alleviate some of the administrative burden on agencies. So that's a concrete example where both we've been able to make progress and we've identified that there's a real need for progress and some specificity in the future. I think that's to one of your earlier comments, just something I forgot to mention, but we'll be in hopefully like a future revision of this is we've taken a close look at agency capacity, people who are in some kind of job or role where they've got data or analysis as part of the responsibilities and looking at the changes in capacity over a while. So we're trying to take a close look at like what are the resources who the state has for this. So there should be some more detail in kind of the subsequent drafts. So I think we wanted to have something, or I wanted to have something go forward that was not a fully written document so that we could get a sense of where the board members wanted to direct it, but that's it's helpful to get some of this. And I think both the examples that are all the examples folks are bringing up is ones where we could dig a little deeper. And I'm hopeful. We also have some good lessons learned and progress from the past couple of years.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways we could proceed that could be helpful, and we're all about metrics. Maybe we set concrete goals for how many different agencies come on board with substantial data libraries over the next year, over the next 2-year horizon, something like that. And we really get to work in earnest on identifying agencies to bring on board, identifying agencies that may already be on board, but we could use additional libraries and data sets from them, and that sort of thing. So, and Scott, I mean, I think that would give you leverage to do your job and to shine, because, you know, we can take a carrot and a stick approach at the same time, and get the agencies the resources they need, even if those are external resources, but at the same time, encourage them along and show progress. So again, this isn't just a touchstone document, but it's a working document that inspires actual improvement and advancement year over year.
See if there's any other suggestions, comments, direction on the current draft. And then I think a question for the board would be if we wanted to either establish a subcommittee or continue the discussion in a subsequent meeting, which could be the public hearing, it could be kind of an additional meeting for that. But I think so. Currently, we have a draft that is fairly broad in terms of what it covers. We add more detail, I think, in the next month based on this discussion, based on sort of additional outreach, the public hearing at the end of November. My sense would be that December is the time to add a little more detail to the plan, kind of after we've gone through some of that public engagement process. So I take suggestions kind of from the board, whether you want to have a more in-depth discussion before that public hearing in the next 30 days, or if you want to have that after that, at which time, maybe there would be a little more sense of the, if there's other thoughts or suggestions that folks wanted to bring to the table for that avenue. December gives us a little more breathing room. Oh, Thad, you have a hand raised. I'm so sorry. Sorry.
Scott, if process is so required, I hereby make a motion that we form a subcommittee to address the discussions that we've had regarding the draft plan, and in that subcommittee work towards putting a little more meat on the bone.
I second that.
I think I need to call the vote, right? So
Discussion. Any discussion?
Any discussion? Any of the subcommittee? And this is where I'm going to draw, and maybe Michelle and Seth, if this is the procedure that we used 2 cycles ago. I believe we formed a subcommittee.
I do remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because that gave us an opportunity to talk amongst ourselves. That was right. Yeah.
Yet still publicly.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yeah. It did not obligate everybody to participate in that if they were that did not want to be part of that discussion.
And I think separate from that, to answer your other question, and it bears on this, I think maybe we should aim to have the subcommittee meet after more public
comments.
input.
Yeah.
After some public comment, because then we can take into account the public comment in our deliberations in the subcommittee.
I agree that would be easier, and it would allow folks to identify if they wanted to participate in the subcommittee with a little more clarity. And I think particularly, I think for the relationship with BITS, the sort of state IT, our representative is not here, but I think that would be something we're having that's a good opportunity for direct involvement.
And I also think that another advantage is if we have our deliberation at the same public comment meeting, we may tend to take over and speak more. And I'd rather allow as much public comment as possible and not interfere with that, and really only ask questions if we have them of the public commenters. And then we go back and discuss amongst ourselves, again, publicly, but in a subcommittee format. I think that's probably the best way to tackle it. Thank you. Okay, call the question.
Yeah, any other discussion topic? No, so.
Scott, just as a
Oh,
reminder,
Valentina.
because I wasn't in GE at the last when the last public hearing occurred, we still need someone to convene the subcommittee. And who would like to be members, they can email me and you if they'd like, and I will form a separate distribution list, but we still do need someone to convene it. If you will be part of the subcommittee, of course, you can convene it. But if not, then we do need to choose someone.
That would be my preference, that I'm part of it and convene it, unless there's any objection to that. And then I think if we have the subcommittee meet in December, essentially after the public hearing, we can also take the identification of members, after that point. It buys us a little time for that to distribute this with the members who couldn't attend the meeting today too. Some of this is, I know, short notice for folks. Then I believe, and anyone with better grasp of parliamentary procedure can correct me, I'm calling for the vote on the creation of the subcommittee, and we will table the nominations for subcommittee members until after the public hearing. I see nodding from our parliamentary experts. Great. All right. Call the vote. Those in favor? Can we just do the voice vote for the
Aye.
five
Aye.
voting members? Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Great. So we will form a subcommittee. We should have named it a planning subcommittee, drafting subcommittee of the board that will identify members and convene in December. And I will convene it at that time. All right. Great. And we can determine the form for the meeting at that time too. So I know we had done some of these in person pre-pandemic. I'll leave it kind of as a question. We can decide about the way in which to handle the small group meetings. All right. I'm going to stop screen sharing this. We had two other items that were on the agenda, and given the time, we'll either run expedited versions of these, or if members of the board want to emphasize one or the other, please say so. But we were going to go through two updates on the kind of open data front. One, both again, hopefully responsive to recommendations from the board in previous discussions. One is we've gone and done surveys of users of the state's open data portal to identify where they would like to see changes or improvements made to that. So that's directly informing the first off, that is a goal of the previous plan that we would do that, and that will directly inform the development of the next plan. So we can go through the results from the first round of the user surveys for that, or we can go through the current plans and possibly a brief demo for the GIS clearinghouse, which is the first sort of development of a state portal for making the GIS spatial information a little easier to access through a central portal. So those are both things that I believe were goals that we had in the last plan. Hopefully we'll be able to fulfill both of those by the conclusion of the plan in December, and we can take time to go through either the user survey results or the GIS clearinghouse in the remaining 13 minutes or so. We can do, I think there's time to do both, but I didn't want to see if anyone wanted to emphasize one or the other.
I think they're both equally critical, so both.
The order we had them in the agenda was the open data survey first. So I'm going to pass the microphone to Pauline, our open data coordinator, who has gone through, we're administering two surveys on the open data portal use, and there we are, is screen sharing and can go through perhaps the expedited version of the results of this. So Pauline, floor is yours. I can't hear you if you're talking.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting and screen sharing at the same time. I'm going to try to share my screen again. I'll go through these quickly. And they're also in a slide show that I can, sorry guys, that I can share with you after. So apologies for my technical struggles. It's my issue with managing multiple screens. It's not going well. Here we go. Okay, can you guys see this? Awesome.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Zoom. All right, sorry again. Here we go. So yes, we did a survey of editors and publishers on the Open Data Portal. This was to understand their experiences, what challenges they were having using the portal, just to get a better understanding of who in-state agencies are using the portal as well. So we did the survey at the end of September. We sent it to 171 editors and publishers and got about, we got 57 responses. So I will go through the responses now, just to give you a sense of which agencies participated in the survey. This might be kind of small, but you can see Department of Public Health was the agency with the most respondents, followed by OPM, DCP, DAS, but we got a pretty good response from a number of agencies.
Pauline, it's not
yes.
showing.
Is it not?
No, it's just showing your first
through.
slide.
Guys.
Yeah.
Why now?
I think you have to screen share the window that is the presentation mode. This is,
oh my
I've
goodness.
learned this too. Although if you have the file in a shared place, I can screen share it too.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know why this isn't working.
It's on the Acrobat.
Yeah, I was sharing a PDF and it's, thanks for telling me that it wasn't working. That was good to know.
Sometimes it's better to share your screen rather than sharing the app, and then you just run it from your screen.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, and your mouse is active, so I think this is okay. Perfect.
This is better. Wow.
Better.
Okay. Who knew this would be such a struggle for me today? Okay, well, here we go. I will now go through the results to the questions on the survey. Can you see a bar chart? Yes. Okay, great. So the first question just was, we were trying to understand the activities that people were doing on the portal. You can see here that the most common activity was reviewing data sets, metadata, or data stories. Notably, the second most common activity was updating data sets manually. I think Scott mentioned before, one of the findings from the survey was we need to continue focusing on increasing the amount of data sets that are updated through automation, because a bunch of data is still being updated manually. Let's see, other common activities were creating new data sets, developing data visualizations, and then there are data sets that are being updated automatically. So you can see that here, and that's something we would like to increase going forward. I'm just gonna try to go through these kind of quickly. We asked people what topics they wanted to learn more about related to open data. The most popular response was developing data visualizations using data published to the portal, and relatedly developing data stories. So that's great to see. That's definitely something that we'd like to do more of, sort of highlighting data we have on the portal and making it more accessible to people through visualizations and data stories. And people are also expressing an interest in the automation question, automating updates, as well as writing clear metadata. And both of those points, actually all of those things, I think will be areas of focus for us going forward. So it's great that they align with the topics that people expressed an interest in. Let's see. The next couple slides are pretty text heavy, just asking people what challenges they had on the portal. I won't go through these in too much detail now because I don't want to take up all the rest of our time, but you can check this out when I share the slides. We asked people where they go if they have questions, and it was good to see most people know that they can reach out to our team here at the Office of Policy and Management. Let's see. And also how they wanted to be kept informed about updates to the portal. There was an interest in getting emails from the Open Data Coordinator, having meetings. So that's something we're trying to do more of now. We have a new team in Teams for Open Data Portal users. So we're trying to build a bit more of a user community amongst Open Data Portals in state agencies so that we can have sort of increased knowledge sharing and support amongst users of the portal. Let's see. And then we asked if there was anything else they wanted to share. There's a variety of feedback provided here. One thing that I think is, oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I just make a real quick suggestion on that? What
Mhm.
might make sense, especially if there's going to be like a third party approach to leveraging some capacity building for the agencies, it might make sense to include in an RFP or whatever the development of a user group by that vendor, so that that would take care of some of that stuff and put that on autopilot for OPM, but OPM could be involved in the user group as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. One thing we do have planned for early next year is a training offered through Tyler Tech, formerly known as Socrata, which is now part of Tyler Tech, to provide some training to folks in the user group. So that is something we're trying to, to take advantage of resources that we have through other groups like Tyler Tech. Yeah, this is actually the last slide, so I will try to stop sharing now. So Alfredo can have a few minutes to present, and we can share share these slides so you can dig into them. Sorry for my technical struggles. Oh God, I'm still having technical struggles. How do I stop
There's a
sharing?
little bar that says stop sharing somewhere.
This is like
I
a
don't know where it is.
nightmare. Can someone take away my screen sharing abilities?
Yes, I'll stop recording.
Oh, here we go.
Well, there we are. In the transition to Alfredo, to the other, Pauline, I think the other thing to highlight for the board members is that there's a second, this is a survey that's to the agency staff that post data on the portal basically, and there's a second survey that's out in the field now for community users, which is open to anybody that uses the portal. We send it out to the email distribution list that we can get from the portal, but the link is in a banner on the data.ct.gov site. So for anyone watching this, for the board members, if there's places you want to distribute that, we're trying to get a much broader range of feedback from that second survey, and we'll also use that to inform development.
We also included it in
Thank
our
you.
newsletter. So anybody
Thank
who
you.
receives the newsletter would have received the survey as well.
A wonderful example. Thank you. Then, in the remaining 4 minutes or so, Alfredo, did you want to cover or maybe talk through, or if you want to screen share anything for the plans for the GIS clearinghouse, which I think has been long awaited by many in the GIS and non-GIS community. So.
Yeah, sure. So I'll screen share here kind of quickly. I do intend to show a little bit of it for the moment. Bear with me, it's not loading. Oh wait, there we go. I was just at the bottom of the page. GIS Data Clearinghouse, Geospatial Data Portal, still playing with the name. If you have any suggestions or feel strongly one way or another, let me know. This is an effort to kind of put something that that helps to serve primarily the geospatial community, but primarily those that need to access location-specific data in that format so that they can leverage the tools that they have access to do that, to do their analyses and answer their questions in those ways. My kind of idea for this is for it to kind of stand in kind of partnership with the Open Data Portal that Pauline was just talking about. To kind of be the spatial component, because these are slightly different data sets with slightly different tools associated with them. My focus has been to make sure that people have access to the information in a very interactive and kind of easy to use way, and then still provide them direct access to the data so that they can do whatever it is that they want to do. So what you're seeing here is still very much a work in progress, but it will be done by next Friday. So, a few things that are incomplete still say lorem ipsum, et cetera, or just placeholder text. But by and large, this is kind of the homepage is meant to be kind of like highlight what's new and noteworthy. One of the big things that's new and noteworthy on this is the broadband availability map that is technically due on December 1st, but we're publishing it at the launch of the GIS Clearinghouse, at least the simple version of the map. And then on December 1st, we are going to expand the the data interactive interaction capabilities around that date. We kind of talk a little bit about the mission. We are going to be providing some statistics based on data that is available on the platform. So in this case, whether it's just ACS census data or data from the DOT on the number of bridges in the state, broadband metrics, these are still pointed to FCC data, but these will very soon be pointed to our data from our map and reflect the analyses that we've been doing. We will likely have another one from DEEP and so on. We are highlighting our partner agencies, which are the ones that are contributing the most data. We have it coming soon. This is kind of just to kind of let people know that we are planning to have a way for people to interactively interact with the data in such a way where they can pull different things into a kind of an interactive map and compare data sets in kind of an easy way. As a way of kind of facilitating kind of easy data exploration of different topics, so that you can mix and match data sets and kind of take a look at it. And then, like, if you're like, okay, these are the ones that I need to really dive into, then you can go and download them and then do what you need to do. We have our category search, which, as you can see, I still have to write in what all the categories are. We are definitely working on that. And then we also have a feedback survey, which will be on the About page, which I am not showing now, but you can see when it goes live next week. The other part is I just wanted to briefly show the data library itself. So when you click in here, you see we have about 355 data sets and applications already. Actually, this is just data sets. About 355. Most of these are coming from DOT, DEEP, and Yukon vis-a-vis the Yukon Clear program. Most of the imagery and elevation data from the CT Eco platform. And then the last thing that we are doing is for certain key players like CT Eco, the Open Data Portal, DEEP, and DOT, we have given them a site that's kind of a placeholder or kind of a foothold on this site, so that they can kind of explain more about who they are, what they're doing, what they provide, and then link off to their data. So kind of give them a way to kind of manage a presence on the geospatial data portal, so that people can be directed to those other places. So this is an example of what those would look like. We would have a featured resource, and then potentially highlight some metrics or not, talk about the organization and their portal and what it's all about, contact information, and then have a highlighted link to their portal, so that they can kind of see explore the data that way. There may be additional resources, but the plan is for all of the data to be accessible through this platform. And if you need to go to that other platform, it's because you are looking for something a little bit deeper. And yeah, that's about what I'm prepared to show today. But what I can do is I can talk a little bit about what some of the things that are going to be included on the About page is. Obviously, we're going to give an overview of the site, the GIS office, and also professional organization partners like NSGIC and NEARC and the Connecticut GIS Network. As well as providing some kind of help documentation, API documentation, things like that kind of at the bottom, as well as a feedback survey with a very simple dashboard that kind of shows some of the key metrics from the responses to the dashboard. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Looks great.
So-
Just a comment.
Thank you. Pauline, you have a question? Oh, you had your hand raised. Or is that an applause?
I was applauding.
Okay, thank you.
So when will it be ready for, I mean, this is very exciting and I really like the site that you're developing. When do you think it would be ready for, we'll say, a municipality to perhaps advertise it to its constituents?
So the site is going public next Friday. I'm flipping the switch then. We are announcing it at GIS Day at the Connecticut GIS Network event at Fairfield University. People can start talking about it then and feel free to talk about it then. You know, it is going to be a work in progress and it is going to constantly get better. And the more feedback we get and the more, you know, requests and comments and things like that we get, the better it's going to get. One of the things, I don't know if you noticed on there on the top menu links was a other partners page. So, you know, that is a space that I want to highlight. Obviously the main partners like DEEP and DOT and all of them, but I also want to be able to highlight other partners like the COGS and the municipalities. If they have their own open data pages, I would create a space for them where I would say, click here to go to the City of Hartford open data page, click here to go to the CROG open data page, etc. So things like that. And then, you know, kind of a functional thing as far as a data perspective, one of the things that we've kind of identified is trying to intake and pre-filter some of the national data sets from, say, NOAA, the Census Bureau, FEMA, etc., and kind of add them as items into the clearinghouse, but pre-filter them for Connecticut. So they're still being managed by those federal agencies, but when you look at it through our portal, you are only seeing the data for Connecticut. And if you bring it in, then it automatically comes in, or you can download it just for Connecticut, or you could remove that filter and download the whole data set if you want, or change the filter. So we're trying to give people that flexibility. That part will not be done by next week, because that's not a substantial amount of work. But that, that is one of the things that we have in mind. And then beyond that, we actually have a working group working under the auspices of the GIS Advisory Council that is been developing kind of recommendations and also looking at literally every single other state's portal and with a rubric and kind of grading it and seeing what we like, what we didn't like. And a lot of that feedback and kind of exploratory research has gone into the design of this site already. But there are some more ambitious things that are in that document that is still in the process of being written, that, like when that working group, say, delivers that document to the council and the GIS office, that's going to be our document of like, okay, here is where we have to go. This is what we ultimately want to do. And then we will also take feedback from other sources to kind of inform and improve the site. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That's great. Thank you.
We're over the allotted time. I don't know if there's any other questions, comments, feedback from the members. Otherwise, I think, as Alfredo said, this will be out for the public next Friday. Again, to emphasize the point he had on the user survey, we're really looking for feedback on that for the GIS portal. There's a user survey for the open data portal that's live now as well. So trying to get feedback through a variety of mechanisms for both of those. More generally, I appreciate the comments, guidance, feedback from everyone in this meeting today. We will reach out to you after this to schedule the public hearing at the end of November. If there's any limitations or things that folks have that you want to apprise us of, that will help in that process. And any other feedback or comments on the plan, we definitely welcome. We'll have that online. We've had a public comment form for that in the past, and we'll have a public comment form, I think, hopefully in the next day or so, to enable anybody that wants to supply something online for the plan as well. So otherwise, thank you to everyone. Motion to adjourn. Anyone?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Thank you. We are adjourned.